Hello and welcome to another edition of Shoot the Gap on Fantasy in Frames. Tonight, we're going to do a rookie IDP offense combined rookie mock draft, 1 QB, 1.5 tight end premium. We've been getting a lot of calls for this. Everyone wants to see kind of where these defenders go with the offensive guys. So stick around. We got it coming for you. So we're going to start things off here. We got the 1-1. We got Rhett starting things off for us. Just a reminder here, we're going to go high defense here. A lot of sacks, interceptions, turnovers, high premium on tackles. This is a league that's pretty even offensive and defensive scoring. That's kind of how we're looking at tonight. We're going to go 1 QB, not super flex tonight, to kind of see where these guys drop there. And again, tight end premium, just a 1.5. So let's get this draft underway. Rhett is on the clock with a 101.
I mean, is there any question, even if we are looking at the fact right now that we are looking at a very high IDP scoring sort of format, I think the pick here is obvious. I think we all know where 1 QB drafts have been going. And at this point, with the type of volume that you get with offensive players, I mean, there's only one place that you can really go with a 1-1 in pretty much any format right now that isn't a super flex, and that's Marvin Harrison Jr. for me. I mean, the upside is there. He's got the quarterback. You know, he's the wide receiver one in that situation. You know, there are just a lot of things to like about that heading into the season. So, you know, for me, Marvin Harrison, no matter the format, outside of Superflex, unquestioned 1-1.
Yeah, absolutely love it. And I'm going at 1-2 right after you. I'm sticking with you. Like you said, neighbors. I know a lot of people don't love the Giant situation, but I just think target on target on target. He's going to get all the looks as the wide receiver one there. So I'm absolutely about neighbors at the 1-2. We're on the Dynasty Deviant. Chris here at 1-3 to see where he wants to go as we're starting off with wide receiver early in this one.
Yeah, so I love those first two picks. Those are definitely the exact order that I would have went with my first two. But here in the third, I'm going to throw it up a little bit. I don't know if everybody would follow me on this one, but I'm going with my dude, Brock Bowers, at the 103. And my reason for doing so, it is like the 1.5 tight end premium, but I like him. Like Adunze is the only other rookie, like not in a super flex format, that I'm really like loving at that point. But I'm going with Bowers just because I feel that he is a unicorn and will be fantastic for seasons to come at the tight end position.
Also love the fact with him is the fact that in Oakland, you're looking at Adams, Myers, and then that third wide receiver position is like wide open. Like Brock Bowers is not just a tight end. Michael Mayer's there. So Brock Bowers can be a guy who's going to be in 12 personnel. He can get a lot of big slot snaps this year. He's very much a guy for me that I see potentially knocking on that Sam Laporta sort of snap share from last season, that 85 to 90% range in year one with all the things he can do.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, Bowers. And then we got a couple QBs coming off the board. Caleb Williams, Daniels, McCarthy, 1, 2, 3 in a row there. Then we got Jorge going with Roma Dunze at 1-7. That seems like a good pick. May coming off the board there at 1-8. Maybe a little high in 1 QB for some of these quarterbacks. But depending on where people are sitting on a QB, you could see him kind of stashing some of these guys. I could see some of these guys dropping a little later in these 1 QB formats. McConkey coming off at 108. And then Worthy, maybe a little surprise McConkey over Worthy. What do you guys think?
Yeah, 100% on that for me. I mean, Xavier Worthy is one of these guys where I'm just looking at the fact that we just got off of Fourth and Frames talking about Rashee Rice. We might as well change his name to Rashee Can't Get Right at this point because, I mean, he is just – the man can't get out of his own way this offseason, whether it's in automobiles or in nightclubs. I mean, he is just out here screwing up his potential right now. So I think with Xavier Worthy, you're looking at a guy who is walking into a tremendous situation. And the more we get into it, the more he looks like he can be that third option in that offense if Rashee Rice gets a suspension. If Rashee Rice can't stop getting out of his own way, there's a path for Xavier Worthy to have even bigger of a role in year one in Kansas City. I agree with that.
And then we got 111, John McGlynn on the clock. We're going to see what John thinks here. This is one QB. Chris B asks, "Is this we're doing one QB, but some of the auto drafts are picking quarterback over in this situation? So most likely, some of these quarterbacks are going to fall in your leagues if it's not super flex. But some of these guys going a little bit earlier on some of the spots that are auto drafted."
I can't get to my picks here for some reason. I don't know if I'm sharing a draft board with somebody or whatever the deal may be, but I'm going to go Brian Thomas here.
See if we can get that put in there. Thank you very much.
I'm not sure how that. Trevor Lawrence is number one receiver now. I have to go there. It's best available from what I think in this situation.
So we're on the 112 here. So far, we're at the 101. We got Harrison, the Neighbors, Bowers, Caleb Williams, Jalen Daniels, JJ McCarthy, Adunze, May, McConkey, a little bit of a surprise, Worthy, Thomas, and then Brooks. And then we're actually doing a little bit of a snake format here tonight. So we've got Brooks going, and then the second pick in a row going at A.D. Mitchell after Brooks here on the turn, and then we're back to McGlynn.
I'm going to take Trey Benson here because I have to. That's kind of how it works. So I'm not – Jonathan Brooks is probably the number one, but I'm going to go Trey Benson.
Yeah, Trey Benson's the guy. Like, he's been my RB1. I love the landing spot in Arizona. So we've got Nix, Keon Coleman, and then we got our first IDP off the board here. Linebacker Cooper from Green Bay was the number one linebacker drafted second round. He goes at the 2-5. So this is kind of where, depending on your league scoring, where you're going to see some of those IDP guys come off the board. I figure it's going to be somewhere between the mid-second round to very late second, early third. Is that kind of what some of you guys are seeing in some of these IDP drafts?
I was in an IDP. I'm in the middle of an IDP slow draft right now, actually, where we combine offense and defense. And the top guy that went off the board was Latu at 206 in a 12 team. So that is a place where we've seen IDP swing multiple weeks, where, sacks matter, interceptions matter, just big scoring where, a 30-point week can come out of an IDP guy on any given week. So, we saw Latu go at the top of the as the top IDP, and it was mid-second. So, yeah, I think that's pretty spot on the situation.
Yeah, and then we got Junior Colson coming off the board at 2-6. Jorge knows how much I love Junior Colson, so I'm upset about that, as I would have loved to see Junior get back to me. He's my favorite IDP in this league. If you're in any kind of league that big tackles, if you can get 2 points per tackle on a solo, 1 point per assist, I love Colson. I think he's going to end up wearing the green dot and being the man for the Chargers. I love that the fact that he's going to Jim Harbaugh back there, his head coach from Michigan. I just think that's a great, great landing spot. The fact that they took him in the third, I love. So he goes off the board at 2-6. Then his Michigan teammate, Corum, at 2-7. Then we see Latu, the number one defender, taken in the original draft, in the actual real-life draft by the Colts. He ends up going 2-8. Then we get Dallas Turner at 2-9. The outside linebacker defensive end for Minnesota out of Alabama. He's there. So now we've got Chris up here at 2-10 as we see a string of IDP going off the board.
Before we go any further, does any of Latu's history scare him off from some people? Has he been falling in drafts because of his neck and his situation with his his past, his going out of football, coming back, and having all the neck issues? Has that brought up any kind of trouble signs to anybody, or he just going where he's going no matter what?
To me, I see that he's going where he's going, and I think I don't know if he's getting buoyed up a little bit because a lot of people are comparing him to Jalen Phillips, who had a similar career arc where he had to retire because of injuries and all the stuff, and then he comes back and he had a great season until MetLife Field took him out. I think a lot of people are just hopeful. It's the season of hope. Right now, when we're in these rookie drafts, everybody's hoping. So I think that's what a lot of people are seeing from what I've been seeing. And
would he be number one if he didn't have those neck issues?
That's a really good question. I'm not really sure. That's a really good question. It's it's so hard for me to like just remove myself from knowing that he's had those
Sure.
issues.
Yeah, right.
No, so I'll answer this Latu question. Here's where I am on Latu. He is the most efficient pass rusher in this draft, and when I say that, that is statistically driven, where he had a 26.8% win rate on pass rush snaps last year. Then you have somebody like Jared Verse, who is my favorite IDP in this draft, who I have as number 2 behind Latu. Jared Verse's win rate was 21.8%. Now, you can make the argument that Jared Verse is more of a 3-down defensive lineman, and that's fine. But 3-down defensive linemen at the end of the day, those tackles don't really matter as much. With defensive linemen, especially with these defensive ends and these edge guys, you're looking for sacks. And for me, I think Latu is going to be a guy that is going to be able to get a lot of pressure and have a Will Anderson year 1 sort of trajectory. And then year 2, I mean, we should see it be Will's up at that point. But for me, ultimately, what I'm going to say is this. Whether Latu plays for 5 years or 15 years, if you can get 5 years out of a guy in Dynasty, you're getting a pretty good time window out of him. So I would say just draft him with confidence, because I think he's just going to be one of those guys that is going to very much impact teams.
Yeah, anybody he's looking for, just maybe possibly a 2.5-year window, a 3-year window out of a player. Right? If they expect a 5 or 15-year, right, that's all just bonus points at that point in time. Gravy in the Navy, I guess.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There goes Jared Verse.
Yep,
and then
so
there's the answer from the experts at Fantasy and Frames, where they say dual linebackers and DBs who play close to the line of scrimmage are very beneficial, and an IDP cheat code if the snaps are there. And a great example of that is a guy like Budda Baker or Derwin James. These defensive backs who play close to the line of scrimmage, rack up a lot of tackles. Those are the kind of DBs that you kind of want to have in these IDP formats.
Yeah, but then we had, after Turner, we had Roman Wilson for Pittsburgh, the wide receiver. Chris took, then I took Xavier Legette. I'm loving him at the end of the second round. If I can get a guy who's drafted in the first round, that should be the wide receiver 2 on his team. And then Rhett here on the corner went Verse, and then Persall. Verse would have been my guy coming back, so I took Legette, expecting Verse coming back to me. I know it's going to be a shocker to a lot of people, but then I'm going to go Peyton Wilson, linebacker for the Steelers. I think he fits in really nicely next to Queen, and I just super athletic guy. I think he can do everything if he can stay healthy. I just love the fact that they got him in the third, first-round talent. I love taking him here at the beginning of the third in an IDP offensive combined draft.
Yeah, I think that was a great pick. You sniped me a little bit because Wilson was going to be where I went here at the third pick. So now that, I feel like it's a little bit of a tear break. So I'm going to pivot off of the defensive players, IDPs, and go back to offensive side. And I'm toying between 2 players right here. And it's really difficult for me, but I'm thinking I'm going to end up going with Malachi Corley. And the reason for doing this is just so previously we just recorded a show for Dynasty 365 with Theo Grimminger from Player Profiler was on there talking about it. And he brought me over to the Corley camp when he was just saying like, that Rodgers has already invited Corley to stay at his house and they're developing that rapport. And you know how Rodgers is when it comes to trust. And, like Cobb, he's on the shelf like at ARP collecting his his Social Security. Lazard, he's not going to be moved into the slot and like play that big slot. So Corley really has a chance, and everybody saw that like that 2-yard slow motion play and everything. So that's where I went with that play.
Yeah, then after Corey, we got Troy Franklin. Guy went in the 4th, but everybody kind of loves the landing spot in Denver with Bo Nix. My guy, Ray Davis, coming off at 3.5. I love Ray Davis there in Buffalo. I think he's got a good shot to get some playing time, and anything happens to Cook, he's RB1 there. Burton is moving up draft boards at 3.6. Then we've got Marshawn Lloyd, running back for the Packers, at 3.7, going to Jorge. Des Walker going 3.8, then 3.9. Penix coming off the board here. Jorge did see, as anybody did see earlier, he actually did have this set up as a super flex settings, even though we were talking 1 QB. So that's why a lot of those QBs went early. Just heads up for everybody there. Penix going there in the 3rd round at 3.9. Then we got Jalen Polk, 2nd round pick of the Patriots. And then now we've got John here on the clock at 211 as we're getting ready to make the turn.
This is a toss-up. There's a handful of guys here that I could really pull the trigger on. So I really want Jacob Cowing here. I really want Jalen McMillan. But I think I'm going to have to pull the trigger on Jalen Wright here and just take the speedster from the Dolphins. So as a Dolphins fan, I'm not no homerism here and like that. Just I think Dolphins just have a type, and this running back type who's a bigger version of Devin Achane, who has great speed, also can just kind of he fits what the Dolphins want to do on offense. So it's kind of hard to pass a guy like this at the end of the third round.
Then we got Chris here back to back. He goes tight end Ben Sinnett for Washington, the second round pick, second tight end off the board in the NFL draft. Nice, I think, value in a 1.5 tight end premium here at the end of the third round. I like that. He actually double tapped the Commanders players. He took Luke McCaffrey, who went in the third round, a guy that I've seen slipping in drafts. I think he's a guy people kind of forgetting about. He's been a guy I've been seeing really nice value in the fourth round of drafts, fifth round in some IDP drafts. So he's a guy to keep an eye on just for value's sake.
So now it's my turn again. Do I take the Jalen McMillan, who will probably have a job next year in Tampa Bay, or do I take Jacob Cowing, who will probably have a job next year in San Francisco? When both these teams kind of move somebody forward, it's kind of a toss-up, but I think I'm going to go with Jacob Cowing here, as I think that San Francisco makes a move faster than Tampa Bay does.
Yeah, I like Cowing. I don't know if he gets a lot of play this year, but he's a guy I like for the future. I just think he can cut out a role in the NFL. I like that offense in San Francisco. He really surprised me at the combine, run that 4.39 40. I was really surprised about that, to kind of go with being an ultra productive guy in college. So even though he's really small, I like the upside of Cowing. He's a guy I'm targeting in the fourth rounds.
It's going to be either next draft I'm going to pick McMillan, this draft I'll take Cowing, and I'll keep going back and forth because they're both pretty much, to me, they're in the same tier.
Yep. After Cowing, we got Braylon Allen running back to the Jets, Jalen McMillan, wide receiver, Tampa Bay. Then we got Will Shipley running back to Philly. And then Jorge drafted Cedric Gray, linebacker, Tennessee, a guy I really like at IDP. I think he ends up winning a starting role there in Tennessee. I'm just not sold on their linebackers. Al-Shazir was my favorite guy there, and he went to Houston. I think that linebacking core is wide open in Tennessee. I don't think they're going to be that good. I think it's a chance for somebody to make a lot of tackles. So I love that pick by Jorge in the fourth round of Cedric Gray. Then we have our first DB off the board. Believe Land taking Cooper DeJean at 4.7. Cooper DeJean's a guy I really like. It's going to be interesting to see what format where he's a DB on sleeper, but on MFL leagues, if he ends up getting cornerback designation, he can play cornerback or safety. If he ends up playing that nickel corner and then also plays special teams, and you have a league with special team points, I'm loving Cooper DeJean. I just think he could get you some nice points on defense there. Chris or Rhett, either one of you guys, what are you guys thinking about Cooper? I'll say Rhett since Chris is actually on the clock here. I don't want to. I try to interrupt you right as you're trying to draft.
It's all good.
No, he deserves that sometimes. But anyway, Cooper DeJean, really like the player who he is, very athletic. The thing that worries about him is this: as a cornerback, especially as a nickel cornerback, there's been some times where my man got cooked in college. So I'm a little bit worried about the coverage skills. I know the athleticism is there, but like you said, and like we talked about earlier, the closer your DB is to the line of scrimmage, and in that nickel situation, this applies, the more likely you are to get some points there and sneaks the points in the position. So if he gets that designation as a corner and he's playing a little bit of safety too, then I really like that spot as well.
Iowa had a really good defense. Cooper DeJean was a major part of it. When I was at the draft, the Philly fans were going absolutely nuts when Cooper DeJean got picked. They were super happy about that pick.
I love Cooper. I mean, I love this dude so much. Outside of his skills on the field, He is so athletic in the things that he does. Like he was like the fastest high schooler in Iowa when he was coming up, like his senior year. And then you look at him playing basketball. If you really want to see a baller, like a defensive player that can hoop, you know that they can ball. I mean, and this kid is ridiculous. Like his athleticism, like dunking on people effortlessly. And it looks like they're pulling him up on strings on a pulley system. Like I absolutely love it. I absolutely hope that they don't make him exclusively of safety. I want to see him play some DB just because, the league needs this, like, come on, guys. Let's NFL execs, let this guy be be a corner. Come on, let's play.
Yeah, I love that spot. If he ends up playing nickel corner, I absolutely love that. After him, Estime running back for Denver, then Bucky Irving to Tampa Bay. Vidal, the 6th-round pick for the Chargers at running back. So a little bit of a running back run here. I'm up here at 411. There's a couple guys I'm kind of eyeing here. It really kind of depends on my build here. There's a couple linebackers I like. Defensive tackle. If I'm in a league that starts defensive tackle, I'm taking Johnny Newton or Murphy here because I think both those guys can rush the passer and give you really nice defensive tackle points. If I'm playing on sleeper where D-line and defensive tackle DN are together, I don't love it as much. If I need defensive back, right here I'm looking at Newman. And the reason I like him is I feel like he's the next kind of Antonio Winfield type of player who led most IDP leagues in scoring last year, a guy that can play all over the field, can make different things. He's going to immediately start for the Giants, taking over Xavier McKinney's spot since he went to the Packers. I'm going to take Newman here. I just think he's a guy, even if he ends up playing the deep safety, I think he's going to be all over the field. I think he has a chance to make a ton of different plays. And I don't think the Giants are going to be very good. So I think he's going to be forced to make a lot of plays and a lot of tackles. So I'm jumping on Tyler Newman out of Minnesota, who's now on the Giants at 411.
Yeah, and I like the pick there because, like you said, the positional upside there, the fact that he's going to get immediate playing time, both of those things work. Now, I will say this. I'm on the clock right now, and I know we're in an IDP format. But especially this first pick I'm about to make, I'm just going to go ahead and ask the question because I'm really high on this guy. How is a guy like Javon Baker falling to the 412 at this point is the question I need to ask. And then after that, let's go ahead and hit the double tap because I love my pass catching running backs this late. And I'm going to take Dylan Law with the 501 because with Javon Baker, first off, with that receiver room being what it is, there's a path where he can be a very early contributor for that offense. I know it's a bad one, but volume is king. And if he gets early targets, and if, like he said, he's one of the top 10 receivers in the league out of the jump, not really, but just play along with me here. If he's better than we think he is, if you're able to get him in the late 4th round, which is as late as I've seen him going so far, I think you're getting a guy that has a lot of upside. And the same with Lave, who is, for all intents and purposes, going to be the running back 1 and running back 2 in Las Vegas this season with a Zamir White in front of him, who is not a particularly strong pass catcher, with 2 quarterbacks who like to check the football down, whether it be Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell. So I think Dylan Labe in the top of the 5th round is a very interesting selection here.
Yeah, we just talked about this on our show on the Dynasty evaluation with John. I just think Labe, he's one of those guys that hit the perfect landing spot. I mean, the Raiders they don't really have a pass catching back. So he kind of seems like he's a guy that has clear-cut path to playing time there with the Raiders. So I really like that. I agree with you, Rhett. Baker falling this far is the best offensive player by far right now. And the fact that you got him at 412, I think, is an absolute steal, especially if you look at what other offensive players are still on the board here. I'm looking through offensive players, and I'm like, damn, I wish I would have had Baker here. I would have loved Baker here. Now that I look at it, I'm like, I should have taken Baker first and then tried to get Newman on the turn here. I'm kind of mad at myself that I missed that because he was still sitting there. So that's a great move by you. Because he is not there, I was going to go offense with this pick. But looking through who's left, I think I'm going to go defense. And the reason I'm going to go defense is one of my last top linebackers. So this guy falls into my top 5, and that's why I'm going to grab him here. And that's Wallace out of Kentucky, going to Carolina. I think he might not be the starter at the beginning of the season, but I think there's a nice pathway to him taking over and getting a lot of playing time there. I also think Carolina's going to be behind a lot. I think their teams are going to be running against them. I think he's going to have a shot, even if it's not this year. I think next year to be a pretty impactful IDP guy. So at this spot, if I had a offensive guy I really liked, I would have grabbed here. But for me, Wallace is the next highest rated player on my board, offensively or defensively. So that's why I went Wallace here at 5-2.
I really like that pick. I do. I'm gonna keep it going with the IDP, and I'm going to the Los Angeles Rams as they're trying to rebuild, that void that's left from Aaron Donald, deciding that he's going to hang him up. And their second round pick, Fisk out of Florida State. I love the big man that's very athletic. Like when you're that size, like almost 300 pounds, and you're running a 4.78. I mean, that is crazy. And I love that athleticism. So that's where I'm going with that pick.
Oh, Chris, the Rams have a type. The Rams have a type on the defensive line. I mean, they're a bit undersized. They're really fast. We saw with Aaron Donald for years, being athletic as he is. I mean, Jared Verse, for me, when I saw that pick in round 1 of the NFL draft, I'm like, this is the guy they see taking on the Donald role in Jared Verse, which is why I'm so high on him, taking him late second in this rookie IDP draft. But a guy like Braden Fisk, I mean, the Rams are very clearly trying to build themselves a rotation where you're going to have a lot of guys moving in. Had Kobe Turner last year, who had a very promising year 1 as well. So, a lot of defensive linemen that are very good for the Rams this coming year for sure.
And Fisk and Verse, they know each other.
Oh, shower narrative. We love it.
I always try to remind people, you could take these defensive linemen that rush the passer well. These guys bump up for me in a bit if you're playing in like an MFL or RSO league that starts defensive tackle. These guys that can rush the passer definitely move up in my book, but they're still worth a pick in a sleeper league where defensive line is all kind of pounced together. We also had a question earlier about, hey, kind of where do you think DBs are going to go in this draft? I think DB, mid to late 4th round, early 5th round is probably where you're going to see a lot of the DBs come off the board. There's some solid ones, but it wasn't like a super heavy DB draft where people loved them. Most of the guys that went off the board in the NFL draft were shutdown corners. And we always talk about this for people that play all the time. They kind of know shutdown corner. You don't want shutdown corners. Shutdown corners are just kind of like, those are the guys you don't want in IDP because they just don't get you points.
Trayvon Diggs, great IDP corner because of the fact that he's always kind of baiting guys and getting into this pass breakup situation, getting a lot of interceptions, things like that. Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, I was going to take my first defensive player here, IDP, and take Byron Murphy, but he was already taken, so I have to go. I'm gonna switch. I love big grease pig nose tackles that just get in the backfield. I love that kind of player. So it just I'm sorry that he's gone, but I have to go Theo Johnson here just for a tight end here. That's he's my tight end 3 in this draft. Really close to being my tight end 2, and that's just someone I just think he might have a path to relevance right from the get-go. So to take a guy like that who's going to walk into possibly all the targets on the team right from the start as a rookie, you really can't pass up that production.
John, I'm with you on Theo Johnson, especially with the Darren Waller retirement. I mean, it's last offseason, the Giants made it very clear what kind of tight end they were looking for whenever they tried to acquire Darren Waller, who I was very bullish on. And because of injuries, it didn't quite work out. Well, you have a guy in Theo Johnson who does have a very similar Waller profile, very tall, runs around 260 pounds, runs at 4.640. Just an unusually athletic tight end for his size. So I'm with you. I think Malik Neighbors is the obvious one there, but there's some very, very much a potential there for Theo Johnson, who I also have as my tight end 3 in this class.
Yeah, he's real close to being tight end 2, but he's tight end 3 for me. So it is what it is. But I'll take it. I'll take the leftovers if you want to call them that. So
I'm going to recap here the fifth, and then let's go through and kind of talk about some of our favorite picks from each round. So here in the fifth round, Dylan Lobb, running back, Vegas, 5-1. Wallace, linebacker, Carolina, 5-2. Fisk, defensive line, Rams, 5-3. Murphy, defensive line, Seahawks, 5-4. Rice, wide receiver, Chargers, 5-5. Sanders, tight end, Carolina, 5-6. Washington, wide receiver, Miami, 5-7. Ali, running back, Baltimore, 5-8. 5-9, Robinson, defensive line, Arizona. Newton at 5-10, defensive line, Washington. Johnson, tight end, Giants at 5'11. And then to finish off our final round mock, Chop Robinson, defensive line, Miami. Kind of, let's go back through the first round. Let's start first with, I'm going to go kind of in order here and kind of tell me who your favorite pick for value-wise. So, Rhett, since you took the 1-1, obviously Marvin Harrison is, an absolute stud. But who is your favorite pick here value-wise for you? You had Marvin Harrison, Jared Verse, Ricky Purcell, Javon Baker, and Dylan Lobb as your 5 picks.
So you're talking about just my team and not in the first round in particular?
Yep, just your team, who you like. We're gonna talk about each individual guy who picked here first, and then we're gonna go back and talk about some different rounds real quick before we finish up. So, kind of who value wise, who did you like? Obviously, Marvin at 1-1, you gotta love that. But is there another pick you really loved out of your 5 selections?
I'm really between that Purcell pick at 301 and Javon Baker at 412 because. You get the first round draft capital with Ricky Purcell. He's probably going to walk in and be the third wide receiver in that offense. And yes, I know there's a lot of I know you have Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. I know all of these things, but we have to look at this. This is a dynasty format. And first off, there's all the speculation. Will one of Ayuk or Samuel get traded? It's possible. But even that situation, if that's not the case, George Kittle will not be around forever. Christian McCaffrey will not be around forever. So there's an opportunity by year 2 or 3 that Ricky Purcell, if he is what they think he is, which is a good route runner who can do some work in the slot, can be a very, very valuable guy. And to get that in the third round, a guy with first round draft capital in the NFL draft, I mean, you have to love that.
Hey, Rhett, let me ask you this. If
Sure.
Shanahan keeps losing double-digit leads in the Super Bowl, will he be around in 2 or 3 years?
It's an interesting question. I mean, he has got such a good reputation, and I know you're kind of just he's really good at winning in the regular season, and he hasn't won a Super Bowl yet. But I think with the 49ers, I think the feeling is that it's kind of a matter of time right now with that roster. But yeah, every year that roster gets 1 year older, and eventually you have to turn it over. And if he doesn't do it with this roster, then eventually in a few years, you might be seeing that. You might be seeing New York Jets head coach Kyle Shanahan. Who knows?
Yeah, I like that. I thought the Purcell 3-1 and 4-12 for Baker were the Baker pick. Kicking myself, I missed that. So I thought that was an absolute great pick for me. At 1-2, I took Neighbors, Xavier Legette in the second round. Peyton Wilson in the third, Newman in the fourth, Wallace in the fifth. This one's tough for me. I'm probably going to go Wilson at 3-2. Just the huge upside of him. I think if you can get him late, early to mid third round, and if he ends up hitting, I think it could be huge. I mean, again, he could be one of these guys that gets injured and never really, meets his potential. But man, he's got a lot. And I just think this defense around him is really good. I mean, they've got guys that bring pressure. I think he's got an opportunity that he can play next to Queen, and they can wreak havoc. So I really love him at 3-2. Xavier Legette late in second rounds is one of my favorite guys. I know people are like super high on him or super low on him. I just think that it's worth it for me. I'm going to take a guy that's probably the number 2 on a team that's going to end up having to throw the ball a ton. And if he hits, great. If he ends up busting, he ends up being another Jonathan Mingo. I'm not gonna be upset that I took him late in the second. So I'm willing to take that shot there. I like Newman in the fourth, but man, I'm jealous I didn't take Baker. I should have taken Baker there in the fourth. Chris, how about you? Or does anybody have anything to say real quick before we move on to Chris's draft about any of my picks and those 5 picks there at 1-2 through 5-2?
I wouldn't have picked those guys.
John's like, I hate every one of your selections. I totally agree, John.
Neighbors, and even though he's not consensus number 1 wide receiver, he may have the most targets in the NFL this year. So I mean, it's at 102. It is what it is, especially in this format. How do you pass up a guy that's going to get maybe 160 targets as a rookie? I mean, there's nobody else on that team. It is what it is. I mean, of course, Theo Johnson's there, but it's Neighbors is just going to be target hog central. So I like that pick of Neighbors. Leggett, Carolina. I mean, there's been criticism there that he resembles Jonathan Mingo, but I think Leggett's a better player than Mingo. We know what we have in Mingo. Leggett, he hasn't shown his true colors yet, so we're gonna give him a pass for right now. And then the rest of your players on defense are absolutely fantastic. So you did a pretty good job here, JT. I'll give you some credit.
I appreciate that. So Dynasty Deviant Chris, the third pick went Bowers, then Roman Wilson at 210, Corley at 3-3, Vidal at 410, and then Fisk at 5-3. Kind of, what'd you feel about this draft? What was your favorite pick, or your least favorite pick, or best value?
Yeah, so just based on the way that the draft board fell, I feel like I was just taking who I thought was the best available at that point in time. The Wilson pick, when I went with no. So I really like the Wilson pick a lot. That might be my favorite pick, just because I have Wilson for my own personal generic deviant rankings. Like he top 15 of the rookies right now, and then getting him at the 22nd pick, I feel like I got some value there. I think he's going to outperform that ADP, to be honest with you. But then Corley, I was torn between picking Corley or Marshawn Lloyd. But I ended up going with Corley there. Really don't know why, it was just one of those things, just for the sake of the draft, to see how it is, see how it all plays out if I win a different route. And that's that. Vidal.
Subliminal vision from all this stuff on Twitter, from him catching balls 5 yards downfield by his ankles, right?
Yes, you see, the thing about that is, I don't know if you know this about me. I'm contrarian by nature. So when everybody is going crazy and slurping the slow motion, it's shorts and t-shirt videos, I'm going the opposite way for the most part. But that right there, I think I've made that pick just because I'm probably going to go the opposite way if the live bullets are flying, to be honest with you. But and like I said, the conversation you just had on the show, the Dynasty 365 show right before, I kind of got talked in the coil a little bit. All right, so maybe I had blinders on a little bit. I don't know if it's bias. I don't think I have bias. The Dolphins are the best team in the NFL, so I'm not biased at all. That's just fact.
Good man.
And then with Vidal, he comes there. He's got a chance, to earn some snaps and whatnot. So we'll see what goes there. And then Fisk, I like him, but I'm not really sure exactly where that's going to play out. All in all, I would give my 5 picks right there. I'd say a C. I mean, they're just average. I wouldn't say there's anything really great about it. Just took it as it came. But I say Wilson was my favorite pick, though.
Well, Chris, if I would say so myself, if I was looking at your draft, I would say I would give you an F- because I hate the way that you walk. I hate the way that you talk. I hate the way that you dress. I hate the way that you draft.
Rhett bringing all the good feelings to the show tonight. So, John, let's move on to you. You were the one guy at the end of the draft here at 111. You took Brian Thomas, wide receiver of the Jags, Trey Benson, running back Arizona, then Jalen Wright, running back Miami, Jacob Cowing, wide receiver San Francisco, and then Johnson, the tight end for the Giants. You were the only guy that went 0 IDP, and I totally understand this because you're a new IDP guy. So you're a little, iffy on taking some of these IDP players. What do you think about where you took these guys? What was your favorite pick?
I feel like the only zero impact guy that I have on my team right now, who won't be a relatively important to his team, is Jacob Cowing, because unless San Francisco makes a move, but I like him for the future. I think, like I said, I'll start with the top. the bottom. I think Theo Johnson right now walks into, beats out Daniel Bellinger. It takes over the tight end one role in the Giants, who don't have much else besides a whole bunch of slot receivers and the league neighbors. So I think that's going to be in a tight end premium league, let's just say, even if this is not tight end premium, I think he's going to get the second most targets on the Giants team. Other than that, Cowing was just somebody that, like I said, it was McMillan or Cowing who I was choosing from. I think Chris had jumped in and said that he likes McMillan because they're going to move Chris Godwin to the slot and put McMillan outside, which would open. That means he'll have some immediate impact. But like I said, I think Cowing is my only non-impact guy. Jalen Wright's going to definitely get some touches in Miami. I'm not sure that Devin Achane is going to carry the load. Trey Benson is someone who is I'm pretty sure that James Conner is not going, and is probably his final year in Arizona, is not going to be carrying the workload all better. Trey Benson is going to be someone who you're going to see a lot of this year.
I love Benson.
So I think he's someone that I'm targeting. I know this is IDP, and there's no IDP players went in the entire first round. So it was kind of, I expected him to go in a regular draft. I expected him to go this right around here at anywhere from 111 to 2-3 kind of is where Benson's going in most drafts. I've seen him go all the way from in 109, but I think Benson is just going to be, if not this year, half of this year he's going to get a bunch of touches. But I think the future in Arizona is Trey Benson. He's a lot of people's number 1 or number 2 in this draft. He's I'm not that guy that says this is the cut line. He's number 1. He's number 2. He's in the top 3 of this draft class. And Brian Thomas, same thing in Jacksonville. I think that Trevor Lawrence has a situation where this might be the best team that he's ever had. Trevor Lawrence is going to take leaps and bounds strides this year in the NFL. I think Brian Thomas will be a big part of the offense with Trevor Lawrence. He's got a tight end. He's got running backs that can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's got a couple good receivers now. If not, you might call Gabe Davis a decoy, do whatever you want to say. But, Brian Thomas is just somebody that's going to be a big part right from the get-go of this Jacksonville Jaguars offense. So, like I said, Colin was kind of my only stash here, but I'm pretty happy with this draft so far, the way it panned out. I wish I would have had, like I said, I would have took Byron Murphy or I was looking at Quentin Mitchell too because of his draft capital, and I know he might not play. He might be not an instant impact, but I do like him as a player, and that was somebody I was kind of eyeballing if it wasn't Theo Johnson. But if we had one more pick, my next pick probably would have been Quentin Mitchell. So that's where I stand.
So here we're going to run through these pretty quick. Rhett, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to go with, who's your favorite pick, best value, or favorite pick in the second round? Because first round's fairly chalk. We kind of see where guys go there. Who was your favorite pick there in the second round?
I love Roman Wilson at 210. I just think Pittsburgh knows what the hell they're doing drafting receivers. I think you're looking at Arthur Smith, for better or worse. Not a great head coach, really solid offensive coordinator. So I think we're looking at a situation where I think Roman Wilson fits in well. I think there's a Deontay Johnson type role for him in there. There's some good route running ability. There's good speed. Caught 12 touchdowns in Michigan, so we know he can be an effective red zone guy. And like I said, Pittsburgh just knows what they're doing with wide receivers. So Roman Wilson at 210 in that situation, I'm a big fan of.
All right, Chris, you tell me who you like. Who's your best pick you think value-wise, or the guy you like the most in the third round?
So for me, the guy that I like the most in the third round, I really like Troy Franklin out of Denver, reuniting with his quarterback in college. And then, Peyton, I mean, he's an evil genius sometimes. And I don't know, maybe he could only do it with Drew Brees, but I feel like he's trying to cook something up to get his team, how he wants it, instead of using the leftovers that were there before he got there. And, but just to get him at the 3-4, I really think that's a pretty good value right now in this type of format.
John, how about you? Who's your favorite best value, or guy you like the most in the fourth round?
In the fourth round, the guy I like the most is Braylon Allen, but I'm not gonna consider him the best player that was drafted in the fourth round. So even though I from the start I was a big Braylon Allen fan. I honestly think that he's going to make a big splash in the NFL when he catches on. I think he did really well at Wisconsin early on in his career. And then I think last year, I just think that there was too much information being shoved down his throat. He was thinking too much instead of just being a player. So you're going to see Braylon Allen make a big comeback in the NFL. And I'll be happy to give him in the fourth round, which I've been getting him in a handful of drafts. But again, like a guy like Bucky Irving is probably going to take a lot of receiving work away, in Tampa Bay. So I just feel like there's so many good players, but I want to say that Javon Baker in New England, just because of the fact they need so much help in there, he may be the most immediate impact player in this entire round. So I'm going to say Javon Baker is probably my guy who in the fourth round will be the most immediate, immediate and long-term, I'll put it that way, immediate and long-term impact player in this entire round.
Yeah, for me in the fifth round, looking through this round, I expect end of the fourth, beginning of the fifth to really kind of be an IDP round. I expect a lot of guys to start going in the fifth round. Just kind of in the NFL draft, a lot of guys didn't get drafted high. A lot of the guys that did get drafted high were shut down corners, which, we've all learned you don't really want to shut down corner because those guys just don't put up a lot of stats. So depending on, defensive tackle league, if you're in a defensive tackle league, I mean, I love this round. Fisk, Murphy, Robinson, Newton. I just absolutely love it. The guy I probably like the most in this round, if you're just saying D-line in general, is Darius Robinson. I think he could actually be a real big impact player for Arizona. If you're in a defensive tackle league, I actually think he's going to play DN in a 3-4. So if you're in a My Fantasy League, I think he will actually get D tackle eligibility, which I think would be huge. He has the ability to kind of be that Cam Hayward type at the end that plays in a 3-4, but still rushes the passer, makes tackles, has ability to get, 10 sacks a year. I really like him there. I really like the value in this fifth round, especially at the D line. I think a lot of these guys can be impact players. Robinson's probably my favorite in that aspect, but I really like what everybody kind of did here in the fifth round. We're coming up on the 50-minute mark, kind of finishing up the show here. Let's start first with Chris. Any thoughts about any other players or any other picks from the rest of the draft that you either liked, you hated, somebody you thought went too early, too late? What do you think?
I think Ben Sinnott at the 312. I really love that. I think that he's going to come in there and he's going to take over that tight end role. Logan Thomas is gone. Cole, he never really got off. Chris Cooley, tight end coach and absolutely raves about Sinnott. So I think that's a great pick. As far as going too early, I mean, in a single quarterback, I think Bo Nix went a little too early. But that's just me and my Bo Nix hate. But that's what I got.
I agree. I'm not a Bo Nix guy at all. I still can't believe he went in the top 15 in the draft. I thought a second round pick was really early for him. I talked about this earlier with John. I said I definitely would have got fired if I worked for the Denver Broncos going into this draft because I hated every one of their picks. I didn't like any of the guys where they took them. I guarantee Sean Payton would have been throwing me out of the room. I'd have been like, why are we taking these guys where we're taking them? I would have been absolutely jettisoned from the draft room because I didn't like where anyone went. I think they lucked out that Franklin went at the beginning of the fourth round, was their best pick just because of the Knicks connection. But without the Knicks connection, I didn't even really love that. So I agree with you there. Rhett, what do you think here? Either best, worst, someone you thought was a steal, someone you thought went too late. What do you think on your final thoughts?
I mean, Jalen Polk at the 210. I mean, you're talking about as much as Javon Baker, where he's getting some love. I mean, we've talked about this Patriots room needing a lot of help as well. I mean, Jalen Polk was the guy who went before Javon Baker, 37th overall. So, he has a very good shot at walking in and being that wide receiver 1 from the first day. Does a lot of good stuff in the intermediate. And I think that's going to be important for whether it's Jacoby Brissett starting or Drake May starting later on down the line. They're going to need that sort of guy who can work these crosses and do all these things really well. So Jalen Polk at 310, when he's a guy that's going in most cases without IDP, mid to late second round, I think is really solid value.
Same to you, John. Final thoughts. Anything you love, didn't like at all? Too early, too late? What do you think?
Not that it's too early or too late. I think right in the middle is where I'm kind of ending here. Josh Jacobs in Green Bay is on a 1-year contract, and the Marshawn Lloyd might be someone who I'm not sure how much work he's going to get this year, but further down the line, he may be the man in Green Bay. He may be the man as soon as next year. So just someone that I think could handle the workload, be the future, possibly be the Aaron Jones replacement that they're looking for. Josh Jacobs, does fine. He's a volume guy. He can catch the ball in the backfield. He does it pretty well. But I just think that they can move on from a guy like Josh Jacobs. He got that elaborate contract. Move on to Marshawn Lloyd and start the future with him next year. So I'm going to go right in the middle. The one's too hot, the one's too cold. I'm staying right in the middle of Marshawn Lloyd right there, and that's my pick.
So I'm going to go one offensive and one defensive guy. I thought the absolute steal of the draft was Javon Baker at 412. He very well could be the number one for the Patriots this year on a team that's going to be down and chucking the football down the field. So I love the 412 there. I love what Rhett did getting him. Like I said, I looked up and I was like, oh, I didn't realize he was on the board. Huge miss by me there. I love that pick. And I have to stay, on brand and Junior Colson at 2.6. I don't know if it's too early for him at 2.6, but I absolutely love him. I think he's going to be a stud for the Chargers. I think he's going to have a long, successful career. He's not the sexiest pick. He's not the most athletic player in this draft. I just think he might be the best all-around football player. I really love Junior Colson. The fact that he went 2.6 for me, Jorge, we're going to have to keep an eye on you because I'm going to have to pick him earlier in drafts if I'm in with you. But I love Junior Colson. If you need linebacker, which I'm in a couple IDP leagues where I'm a little thin at linebacker, Junior Colson's a guy I might overdraft. 2.6 to me is on the high side. I think that's right about the highest you'll take him. I think he's probably going to go late second, early third in most drafts, but I just love him as a player. So I thought that was an absolutely fantastic pick there by Jorge, especially if you're in a league where you need linebacker help or where there's just linebackers getting hoarded and there's not anybody else really around. So awesome drafts, everybody. I think it was a great time. Appreciate it. I know I've been hearing it from people on Twitter, on X, and other places like, hey, we need a full, IDP with offense. I need to see where these guys are falling. I'm in a lot of IDP leagues, and people are like, hey, where are these guys going? So I think this is a nice little test case early on to kind of see where we're thinking these defenders are falling. I think mid-second is where you're going to see the top guys come off the board. But I really think third round, and then like we saw in this draft, I think fifth round is going to really be a prime round where you're going to be able to get some guys that are at nice value. So I appreciate you guys. John, let everybody know where they can find you, your shows, everything before we take off here.
This is John McGlynn. I'm hiding in JT's house right now. All right. So I'm in the front room. Yeah, I'm not captive. I'm okay. He's got me a couple beers. Everything's all good.
He's getting food. He's getting substance. He's totally okay, people.
I haven't got any food yet, but I've got plenty of beers. So we'll work on that. But yeah, John McGlynn, the Dynasty Evaluation Show on Fantasy and Frames. Thank you very much for having me. My first show with Rhett and Chris. So thank you very much. It was a great experience to do some IDP stuff with some really smart gentlemen and JT. So thank you very much, everyone, for having me on. And you find me on Twitter at JohnMcGlynn75.
Yeah, John, he told me no IDP like a year ago. You can't talk about ADP on the show, and I'm out on IDP. I've talked him into it. He's in a couple leagues. We're working him into it. He said never, and he's on board. So we're working him in here slowly. Rhett, how about you?
Can be found on @RMenu Sports on X/Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Wednesday nights, 9 Eastern, 4th and France. My boys Chris and Drew. Just trying to do the best we can on a nightly basis, and mostly you can find us in the Fantasy and Frames group chats, giving Chris Burns a terrible time because that's one of my passions in life. Because he is a D- bloke and an A+ analyst, so we love him for it.
Chris, you luckily get the last word on Rhett here. So give him what you got.
Yeah, you know how it is. They hate us because they ain't us, and that's that's Rhett's manual. I mean, you see what I did there? Did you catch it, or did I go over your head?
Sorry, you did.
Anyhow. So I'm Chris Burns. You can find me on Twitter, Dynasty Deviant. Wednesday nights at 8:00 on Dynasty 365 on the Fantasy and Frames channel. You also find me on Twitter or anywhere else, just, reminding people that how terrible the thoughts that come out of Rhett Manuel's brain are, so when he says some silly stuff, I like to keep him in line, and I do that for the people because, Darwinism hasn't taken effect yet. So I just got to, keep him in check. But no, it's all jokes. It's all jokes, guys. I love this dude. Rhett's a very smart, sharp guy. I love his analysis and then all the passion that he brings to it. I give him hell all the time just because he's out there working hard, and I do applaud him. So it's all jokes.
But I love it. You guys, it was great. I appreciate everybody showing up tonight. Jorge feeling under the weather, helping us out, set things up. But he needed a night off, so I appreciate you guys jumping on Shoot the Gap with me here on Fantasy and Frames. I'm JT. You can find me at JT Orange on the Twitter machine. Also, you can find me on the Stew with JT Brew, newly brought over to Fantasy and Frames. So I thank Jorge for bringing me over in my show. So check that out. I'm also on the Dynasty Evaluation podcast with John. On top of that, if you into IDP rankings, all that stuff, you can find my stuff on Fantasy and Frames. Also, my rankings are on DLF. A bunch of different stuff on there as well. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Thanks for everybody that tuned in tonight. We appreciate it. We'll see you guys next Wednesday on Fantasy and Frames.